Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for participating in PAN today. I always look forward to these meetings for the opportunity to catch up on all of the great work that everyone is doing. So I'll reintroduce everyone, and I am Amy Wood. I am the head of Metadata and Discovery Enhancement at the Center for Research Libraries, and your facilitator for the Program Assessment Panel. So today we have an impressive group of panelists who individually and collectively have been involved in every aspect of shared print, from the high-level strategic planning to the detailed work of deliberating metadata best practices, down to the tiniest subfield. And now is the perfect time to talk about assessment, because shared print programs have reached a level of maturity and visibility that has revealed their potential for significant impact. But are we doing all we can? We have also been through a year that has inspired us to be simultaneously creative and reflective in answering this question. So the format of the panel will be, I'll reintroduce our panelists. I will kick off the conversation with a few questions, and then we will have time for your questions. And that's when I expect that this will get really interesting. And your questions are really the things that will help us collectively reach our goal in sharing our information and our understanding of assessment here. So here they are again to share their experiences with recent program assessment. We have Susan Stearns, Project Director for the Eastern Academic Scholars Trust, or EAST, Heather Weltin, HathiTrust Shared Print Program Officer, and Alison Wohlers, University of California and Western Regional Storage Trust, or WEST, Shared Print Manager. So for our first question, which I'll ask Alison to take first, recently, each of your programs have undertaken an assessment. Can you describe your process and your goals for the assessment?
Yeah, thank you so much, Amy. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today, and I'm excited to be a part of this panel. So for the Western Regional Storage Trust, we originated with grant funding, and as part of that original grant funding, we did have capacity to do 2 program assessments, one in 2014 and one in 2016. And then when we transitioned to being a fully member-sustained program, we decided to carry forward that precedent of having regular program assessment, and now we plan for that activity every 3 years. We have some great frameworks and established by my predecessors in this program, including a program assessment planning framework that we use to think about our themes and objectives for the assessment, as well as key questions, instruments, and outputs that we wanted. We ended up focusing on a number of areas. We wanted to look across the program assessment, so look at some of the same issues we examined in 2014 and 2016 to see an arc of development potentially. We also wanted to continue to check in with our membership in terms of their satisfaction with the program. And finally, do some thinking about potential new directions and changes for the program. And I'll just mention that the instruments we ended up using for our 2019 program assessment included a membership-wide survey, focus groups, and then 2 small analytical projects to complement those other pieces.
And Susan, would you like to go next?
Thanks, Amy. It's always good to be back at PAN. On the east side, our goal in undertaking the program assessment, and this in fact was the first formal program assessment that we did, was really to kind of follow up in a more formal way on the kind of member feedback that we have received both in our annual member meetings and as part of approximately quarterly update webinars that we do for the members. We worked last year. Ours is, I think, the most recent of the 3 program assessments. assessments, we worked with our executive committee to develop a reasonably lengthy and comprehensive survey. Our focus was really on looking at our members' evaluation, overall evaluation of the value of East, the relative importance of various initiatives that the East Project team has undertaken, and then feedback on particular future directions for East.
Thanks, Susan. And Heather.
Great, thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. So Alison and Susan, by the grace of being able to go first, already listed a lot of the things that overlap with the same reason that resonate within HathiTrust. So I'm just going to simply add a few things. And the first one is that HathiTrust knew that with our program, we'd eventually reach a point of assessment in order to begin to plan for our future developments and the focus of our program. And we found ourselves there now. So to do this, at the end of August 2020, HathiTrust began a process to gather feedback from our 77 retention libraries regarding their views and opinions about our program. And this occurred through both stakeholder discussions and a survey. And like East, this was the first shared print assessment that HathiTrust had undertaken since the launch of our program in June of 2017. And to develop our survey, I'll just simply mention that we used Qualtrics. And a call out to my shared print advisory committee, many of who are here, and they helped me scope appropriate questions.
Great, thanks, Heather. So question 2 for the panelists. So expanding shared print beyond the academic and research libraries is a theme that ran across all of your assessments. So who are we missing and how do we recruit them? And let's ask Susan to start there.
Thanks, Amy. Well, as I think you know, one of the kind of defining characteristics of East has been to be open to membership by a variety of academic and research libraries. And we already have libraries of varying sizes and types, from small liberal arts and state colleges to major research institutions, both public and private. But more recently, particularly within the last few months, we've begun to see other types of libraries express interest in participation in shared print, due, I would say, primarily to the general growth and visibility of our programs and hopefully recognition of their value. So while East has not done yet, at least, targeted outreach to other types of institutions, we are in discussion with both a state library and the library of a large art museum. And as their collections are in fact quite different from those we've brought into East in the past, we already see that it's likely we'll need to adapt some of our models for both collection analysis and potentially access. I also expect that in the coming months, we will focus on some specific outreach to institutions or groups, looking primarily to increase the diversity and inclusiveness of the collective collection of East.
And Heather.
Great. HathiTrust membership is an international community of research libraries, which impacts our collection, services, and of course our shared print program, all of which for the better. So going forward, HathiTrust is really looking at different types of membership and recruitment, but this will only begin to make some connections through our shared print program. I think a couple things I would say is more about shared print globally. I think that the entire shared print community needs to focus on building national awareness and opportunities for participation that are different from what we currently have. I can't give a type of library that I would pick because I truly think it needs to be all of them and even more. Why just libraries? But I think one of the problems is that many of our policies can be restrictive and hinder opportunities. And as a community, we need to begin to evaluate these to see where there's opportunities for us all. Libraries are different, collection needs are different, and to truly build the collective collection that I think we all talk about, we need to start recognizing ways to incorporate those and consider policies that are more comprehensive and equal. And I know that at HathiTrust, we're really hoping that our recent assessment and discussions can help us focus on some of this.
Great, thank you, Heather. And Alison.
Yeah, during our 2019 assessment, we didn't go so far as to think fully about, are we missing kinds of libraries, or are we too narrow in who participates in our program? We are academic and research libraries as of now in West, but we do have quite a bit of variety in terms of the size of the libraries that participate. We have some pretty specialized libraries. And one thing that did come through in our assessment was that it's important to have those smaller libraries engaged as part of this, because they have such interesting and unique collections to be contributed, but that we can do more to offer flexible ways of participating in these efforts. And we can also do more to think through what kind of needs different libraries have from shared print, whether it's a more access-based need or it's a preservation need. We have to be open to be thinking from different perspectives. So that's what I have to add in that kind of area.
Thank you, Alison. So collaboration is another theme that ranked high for members in each of your assessments. So tell us what this means for your program and how we can achieve broader and deeper community-wide collaboration. And this time, Heather, you get the advantage of going first.
Yay! HathiTrust has its foundation rooted in library partnerships with a vision of collective work and the ability to do more as a collective than as individual libraries. So our shared print program builds on this concept by creating a collective print collection tied to our digital collection. So it's only natural that when talking to our members who already participate because of this collaboration, want to enhance it. So I think our stakeholder discussions actually raised several interesting concepts regarding this and demonstrated the need for HathiTrust to take a role in the overall landscape of shared print to help shape and bring together different programs. And this is one of the very reasons HathiTrust decided to join the Partnership for Shared Book Collections and to collaborate with CRL and CDL. Big announcement today, everyone. But also that we can play a critical role in helping our members focus their different pockets of efforts around shared print. We can assist members in understanding the varied landscapes of collection management across our member libraries to inform shared print needs. And I would say also in our survey and discussions, the sharing of resources was mentioned. And as it often is with shared print. And while the majority of our respondents were not interested in unique resource sharing networks, there was the real opportunity for all of us in shared print to collaborate in helping members begin to think about how they consider fulfillment within shared print. And I think all of these, but especially the last one, really starts to show the shift of shared print as a central service need for libraries, and one that is needed now more than ever as the landscape of libraries continue to change.
Great, thank you, Heather. And we'll pass it off to Alison.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Heather just articulated, and just say specifically in our assessment findings, we had a real sort of emphasis on shared responsibility and collaboration. These were the two top reasons that libraries reported participating beyond preservation and collection management. And there were a lot of qualitative responses, open responses that described how libraries consider this kind of effort, shared print preservation, to be a fundamentally collaborative task that is just not possible to be done alone. When I think about what we can do to realize broader and deeper collaboration, I also think about the emergence of federations like the Partnership for Shared Book Collections in Rosemont, and how you know, we're getting to a point where so many more voices are at the table who have expertise, say, in resource sharing or in metadata or in technologies, that I think we're really on a good path, and having those voices at the table from all kinds of areas in librarianship is really going to strengthen our efforts.
Thanks, Alison. And Susan.
Thanks, Amy. Yes, as both Heather and Alison have indicated, I mean, shared print is kind of by definition a collaborative effort. One of the things that our program assessment reinforced is that on the order of about 40% of the East membership total, and well over 60% of those who responded to the survey already participate in at least one other shared print program, and certainly see opportunities for kind of intersection across those programs. Tasks such as joint registration of retention commitments on behalf of mutual members, and shared lending networks, as has been mentioned. Our members also see East's collaboration with the larger shared print community as very important, particularly in the development of best practices and shared tools and infrastructure. So I'll do a shout out today for the press release that just came out announcing the new tool available from the CRL CDL HathiTrust initiative. Thank you all so much. I do think that one of the biggest challenges that we'll have over the next few years will be to kind of bring together these various threads of shared print into a more cohesive framework. And I look forward to that being the case.
Thank you, Susan. That was very interesting. So you all were in different phases of reporting and follow-up on your assessment. What has been or might be the impact of what you have learned on your program to date? And we will start with Alison.
Yeah, so the West assessment is the probably furthest along. We completed it in 2019, and following the assessment towards the end of 2019, we held a strategic planning session for our governance groups, our operations and executive committees, who took the findings of the assessment and transformed them into strategic recommendations to present and discuss with our members. So that was completed at the end of 2019. 2020, as everybody knows, we had some wrenches in the best laid plans, but we did end up convening several new working groups in West to review our access guidelines, for one thing, to look over our disclosure and validation processes, also to explore non-journal formats, so thinking about how West might address other needs beyond retrospective journals and serials. So we have been taking action in 2020 in these different areas. Of course, there's still more to do. So we'll be thinking more about the aspect of how we provide more opportunities for participation, as I was saying earlier, to different kinds of libraries, how we can best leverage and maximize libraries' existing workflows to feed into our shared print workflows.
And Susan.
Yes, thanks. East is not quite as far along as Alison indicated is the case for West. We just closed our formal survey the end of 2020, excuse me. So we're still in the process of analyzing the results. But there are some clear messages that East will be responding to as we move forward. We've already talked about the need to consider ways in which we can increase the diversity of our membership and our collective collection. I think also the events of the last year really focused a light on the need to devote more attention to the role that digitization plays to increase access to the East collective collection. In fact, access itself was a theme in the East assessment overall, with shared lending networks, controlled digital lending, and improved discoverability of shared print, all ranking high across the East membership. And we're also beginning to see shared print, and this came through in a number of the more open-ended comments from the users, having shared print figure more prominently in both strategic and operational planning around collection building in member libraries. And that has, I believe, implications for our continuing to work with the community on streamlining workflows and increasing access to cost-effective tools.
Great, thank you. And Heather.
I mentioned a moment ago of the few of the things we're pondering. So I wanted to dig a little deeper. And of course, Susan and Alison, we're seeing the same things, which I think you've heard embedded throughout our discussion so far. And I want to dig deeper a little bit about collaboration, because I think that's something that we heard loud and clear as part of our survey and discussions. So I want to call out a quote from the CDL, CRL, and HathiTrust collaboration. And I promise you, we did not all coordinate that we would talk about this over and over again. But as part of that collaboration, we outlined a vision for the partnership that stated that the future of print collections is shared. Embedding shared print within the life cycle of library collections promotes equity of access, enriches the scholarly record, and increases opportunities for research and teaching. Libraries today are asked to do more with less. So really embedding shared print into the full cycle of print management is essential for libraries going forward. And I know at HathiTrust, as we think about the development of our shared print program, we really need to begin to recognize it as a service to our members, and one that enables them to make decisions as a collective that they wouldn't be able to do individually. And it really falls on HathiTrust to help manage that landscape for them.
Great, thank you. And the next question, and we'll start with Susan, is what will you do differently the next time you undertake a program assessment?
Well, first, our timing was definitely not optimal. So I'm confident that we would look to a non-pandemic time for any future program assessments that East would do. And now that we have the results of this initial more comprehensive survey as a baseline, I also think it might make sense to have future assessments more focused on one or two particular issues. We did try to be fairly broad in this particular initiative, and future efforts might serve us better if we drill down more with different stakeholder groups, smaller, more focused discussions on ways that East can improve its value to the membership beyond continuing to grow and expand would also serve us well, I believe.
And Heather.
So yeah, the pandemic, that I think we probably all would say, but a couple things. Excuse me, I would have really liked to have more discussions which tie directly into the survey findings. So we ran them both at the same time because of timing, both our discussions and survey. And it really would have been beneficial to sort of have a follow-up. Also, like Susan mentioned, I really cannot stress enough the need for different iterations of the survey. Although the information and the turnout we got was great, we really need to go back and ask follow-ups for some of the things that maybe were unclear.
And Alison.
Yeah, so I think as both Susan and Heather said, it is so tempting to ask things. And one of the things I would do next time is be stricter in evaluating the questions and connecting them up to what the action might be depending on different responses. So we really use maximize asking those questions because it can get so long. I would also say that one of the big challenges I found in the assessment process was targeting to particular audiences. We tried to target to a sort of, a set of tasks who were really more aware of everything going on in West, and then to high-level strategic decision makers. And there was overlap, and it didn't go perfectly. So I would definitely put time into thinking about the benefits of branching surveys and how to target those questions. One thing I wouldn't change, which Heather already alluded to on her side, is having multiple groups involved in oversight of the assessment work. So we had our governance groups significantly involved. We also were very fortunate to have some time from a user experience expert at California Digital Library, which made a huge difference. And then also having testers for the survey from the membership. So it was a really, it was an important group effort.
Great, thank you. Thank you all. Well, Matthew, I just wanted to do a time check. I do have another question, but if there are questions that that are, that others have submitted to the chat, I don't want to cheat them out of the time to ask those questions.
Left. I mean, we do have one question in the chat, and actually another couple coming in now. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe can we go to the chat questions?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So the first question we have is from Bob, and Bob wants to know if the 3 programs would be willing to share your survey instruments or focus group scripts, as well as the reports that have the results of the surveys, so that other programs can learn for their own assessments.
So I don't mind taking this one. And I'll just mention that because Susan and I's surveys are not quite done being assessed, I think all of us are planning on sharing them out more widely. I know Alison already has, and they can speak to that. But I did want to just put a plug in for the partnership for shared book collections. There is a best practice that should be published pretty soon about program assessment that will include links to our reports and other just general best practices for assessments and other examples there. So please check it out.
Great, thank you, Heather. A question from Rebecca here. How long did your assessment processes take?
I can start that one off. It took us a solid 9 months. We started January 2019 and we wrapped up in September and then did our strategic planning in October.
This is Susan. We're still at it, so maybe I shouldn't answer that question until the final report has been completed and we've really had a chance to work with our executive committee on determining our next steps. I would say to date, we've spent on the order of, I believe we began work on the project team side in the late summer of last year. The survey itself went out in November. So it took us about 4 months of work with the project team and our executive committee. And like Alison, we were also able at the end to have access to some folks to do some testing and an expert in assessment to review the survey instrument before it was distributed. So those are steps that added a little bit of time to the process, but I think were well worthwhile. I can't imagine a process like this being completed in a minimum of 6 months. And so I'd say 6 to 12 months is probably quite a reasonable timeline.
Yeah, I will add, because we also did focus groups at the same time, I would say probably about a full year. We also intentionally decided to leave our survey open 3 months. So that extended it a little bit, just given the climate of the world at the time.
Thank you. We don't have any more questions that have come in. So Amy, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and ask the final question that you had for the panelists.
Well, sure. Thank you, Matthew. All of the panelists mentioned, some of the stressors of this past year, particularly the pandemic. But we've also been, I think, involved in deeply personal conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just wondered if, for the panelists, if there were particular moments or particular conversations that they were engaged in that really made them either question their own, the assessment, the process, the involvement of the members in that, or just even questioning some of the strategic plans or strategic ideas that were coming out of that the programs have already.
Yeah,
And
Amy,
also, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Susan. I think this is a wonderful question, but I also think it's a little early for me to answer on behalf of East, but I am more than glad, as I am often more than glad to give some personal perspectives on this particular question. And I would say that off the top of my head, the last year, both from the perspective of the pandemic and the lens of increased focus on social justice, makes the preservation of print collections even more important. But kind of what does that mean? Are we approaching this stewardship task in the right way? East, for example, has been all about retaining print materials in circulating collections. What does that mean when circulating collections are going away or at least are closed for long periods of time? Do we need to reevaluate not our mission necessarily, but the methodologies that we've been using to achieve them? And kind of on a more, I guess, mundane level, the East program has depended very much on collection analyses that at least can be expensive and time-consuming for local library staff. And we know from our survey results that both of those are barriers to participation, particularly by some of the smaller and more specialized libraries. So I think anything that we can do as a community to reduce the costs of both this kind of analysis work and other tasks associated with engagement in shared print will have an impact on increasing the diversity and hopefully the inclusiveness of libraries and shared print programs.
Great, thank you, Susan. And I'd invite Heather, would you like to take the next step?
Sure. So HathiTrust has certainly been focusing on all of the things you mentioned during the pandemic. We launched our emergency temporary access service last year, which permits, for those of you who don't know, it permits special access for HathiTrust member libraries that suffer an unexpected temporary disruption, such as a closure like we were experiencing, to get access to their digital collections. HathiTrust has also started work towards addressing structural racism at HathiTrust. And so this includes plans to develop a statement of values and code of conduct. We're also charging several task force and working groups to address collections, metadata strategy, and user engagement, which will all be asked to address structural inequalities in their work. And as staff, we're committed to this work and have begun examining where and how structural inequality is built into HathiTrust activities. So we can center anti-racist work in day-to-day service provisions and developments. While developing the assessment and forming the discussion groups, these concerns really was central to our thinking. But like all surveys and discussions, I think there's always things that we could improve on. And so I think that the survey that we did really showed that there's changes needed and expected in the shared print landscape. Anything from, as we mentioned earlier, our policies and procedures to who we let participate in our programs. And so I think the key I would leave us all with is that this is a really long path forward, but at HathiTrust, we are extremely committed to change in everything we do. And so I know that we will be very active in this area.
Great, thank you, Heather. And Alison, we're a little bit over time, but would love to hear what your thoughts are.
I'll just echo both Susan and Heather as what they have said is a great place to leave us. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all very much for the opportunity to present these three great assessments. So our contact information is here, and I'm sure I'm sure my panelists would love to hear from you personally. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.